Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is officially out in theaters, and now we're going to talk about it. This review will have some spoilers in it, so if you haven't seen Shang-Chi yet and want to, go watch it and then come back. So going into this movie, I was pretty excited. A lot of people were calling this one of Marvel's best movies, and I was excited to see how I'd feel about it. And overall, this movie was pretty great. But I do have a bit more problems than I usually do with Marvel movies, so let's start talking about this movie. Let's start off by talking about the action. The action here is really great. Every single fight scene in here is thrilling and epic, and it's really well choreographed and looks really beautiful. And even though there is a lot of fight scenes in here, it still makes you want more of the fight scenes because they're so cool and fun. And it also makes you wish that the fight scenes were longer than they are. But there was a problem with the fight scenes. It was that a couple of moments in here weren't shot well. There were times where the camera was too far away from the characters that it was a little hard to tell what was going on. And there was also some visual effects in the way, and you couldn't really see what the characters were doing. And it was a bit of a problem throughout this movie, and it's a bit distracting. But overall, the fight scenes in here are fun and thrilling, and you're going to have a good time with them. This movie is also extremely funny. Almost every joke lands, and the performances make them even better. Simu Liu and Aquafina are the main people that crack jokes, and they work great together and separately. And also the reactions of the characters are funny. There's this part where there's like this creature without a face on it, and Shang-Chi and Katie start freaking out, and it was pretty funny. Let's talk about the characters. Every single character in here is great. Shang-Chi is a great lead, and it gets you really excited to see what he's going to do in future MCU movies. Katie is also really great in here. She's the great side character and friend of Shang-Chi, and when she interacts with Shang-Chi, it's really great and probably one of the highlights of the film. The Mandarin here is also pretty great. He's a villain in here, but you can understand where he's going from, and his development is so good that you don't really consider him a villain. Even when he's breaking down a wall that's releasing a bunch of murderous dragons, you still don't feel like he's the bad guy. And also, the fake Mandarin and Ben Kingsley is in here, and he was a pretty great side character, and his pet is also really good, even though you could tell that it's a merchandising gimmick. I still liked the animal in here, and I would say that it was probably necessary for the movie. And everyone else in here is also really great, even though they're only in the movie for 15 minutes. They're still really fun and interesting. My one real problem with the characters doesn't lie in them personally, but it's the third act, because it really only focuses on Shang-Chi and the Mandarin, and you forget that the other characters are even in this movie until they remind you with a scene with them in it. And after that scene is done, you already forget that they're in there, which was kind of disappointing because you really like these characters and you want to remember them for the entire length of the movie. But it wasn't the biggest deal ever, and the characters overall had the perfect amount of screen time and the perfect amount of development they needed. Let's talk about the actors. Most people in here do a really good job as their characters, and they really add to the comedy and emotion of this story. Simu Liu, Aquafina, and Tony Leon in particular were probably the best actors in here. And everyone else in here is really good for the screen time they have. But two performances in here I didn't really like. It was Florian Montiano and Benedict Wong. Florian Montiano plays Razor Fist, and I didn't really like his performance as him. He was good in his first scene because he didn't really speak and he was just a cool character for Shang-Chi to fight. But when he's a sort of big part in the third act, I didn't really like his performance because he seemed too serious and also trying to crack jokes at the same time, so I don't think that his performance worked. And Benedict Wong as Wong also didn't work because it didn't seem like Benedict Wong was putting the most of him into the character. And it's probably the worst performance as Wong, but I can't really judge that yet because he's only been in like 2 Marvel properties. But overall, most people do a good job as their characters, and I think that the cast is perfect, and I probably wouldn't have cast anyone else as the characters. Let's talk about the emotion now. It works really well in here, more than most of Marvel movies, because a good chunk of the movie is dedicated to fleshing out every single character, and there's a lot of flashbacks in here that mostly well develop the characters, and Simu Liu and Tony Leon do really good at making me care for their characters. And when Shang-Chi is interacting with his father, it's really intense and nerve-wracking because the Mandarin has become sort of ruthless and doesn't really care who he hurts to reunite with his wife. But my real problem with the emotion is like the last half of the third act, where it seems to really drop the emotion for a giant CGI climax. Like there's a part where Shang-Chi is confronting his father and his father realizes that he's been doing something wrong the whole time. But then they kind of drop that when a dragon comes in and kills Shang-Chi's father. And I feel like the entire dragon fighting climax was pointless and probably could have been cut out of the entire movie. And I think that the better climax would have been to have Shang-Chi confront his father and his father learn that what he's been doing is wrong. But overall, the emotion worked really well, and I just wish that they had handled it well in the final act. Let's talk about the flashbacks in here. The flashbacks are easily the worst part of this movie. A lot of them are actually pretty interesting and develop the story a lot, and some of them are even pretty intense because there's like these scenes where the Mandarin is killing a bunch of guys because they killed his wife, and there's another one where Shang-Chi's father is also torturing a bunch of soldiers to be some of the best soldiers. And stuff like that really worked and helped the movie. But like there's 5 flashbacks that didn't work, and one of them was really important, and it was where it showed where the mom died, and I did care to see what happened, but they took way too much time before they showed it, and they really should have showed it in like the end of the first act for it to work. And there's also flashback during the third act where Shang-Chi is remembering the past, and it got to the point where it was actually annoying because it was interrupting such cool scenes, and we had seen these flashbacks before, so they were pretty much pointless, and a lot of them could have been cut out. So where should you see this movie? I would recommend it in a theater because it looks really beautiful on it. And I don't think you have to go to like IMAX or something to appreciate the film. If you want to go to the theater and you don't want to pay for IMAX, just go see it in a normal theater because that still works. But if you don't feel safe watching it at the theater, then you could probably wait like 45 days before Disney Plus releases it on their streaming service. Overall, Shang-Chi was a great Marvel film that was pretty mind-blowing and a total blast. I just wish that some of the stuff in here was handled better than it actually was. But in the end, Shang-Chi is still a great film, and I would totally recommend seeing it if you're a big Marvel fan. And I'm going to give Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings an 8 out of 10. Guys, thanks so much for watching. You can check out my other channels linked in the description, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!